let's just get right into the news. Let's see. I'll read the headline. It comes from Bloomberg, the business blog that has, in recent months to recent years, they've kind of gotten into reporting on game news. And here's the headline. Bloomberg, China's NetEase is in final negotiations to poach Yakuza franchise creator Toshihiro Naghoshi from Sega. So, the creator of the Yakuza series, going all the way back to 2005 on the PS2, Toshihiro Naghoshi is potentially leaving Sega, a place that he's been working at for, gosh, I don't even know how many years. He's been with Sega prior to Yakuza. He'd been working there for a very long time. And it sounds like a Chinese company, NetEase, is going to sweep him off his feet with a big tempting bunch of cash. A big bundle of cash. So let's read the rest of the article, if we can. Okay. NetEase is in final negotiations to poach Yakuza creator Toshihiro Naghoshi from Sega. I read that part. The hire from Sega Sammy Holdings, which is, the official Sega name, but we always just call it Sega, would mark the biggest coup in contest between NetEase and close rival Tencent Holdings Limited to scoop up video game talent and assets in Japan, made more urgent by slowing growth and regulatory pressure at home in China. Nagoshi, who developed and helms one of Sega's most successful action series, which is the Yakuza series, is expected to set up his own team and create new games. People familiar with the matter have said. He hasn't signed a final contract, and his duties have yet to be finalized, they said, asking not to be identified, discussing this private deal. It's a little awkward that these guys keep groaning and moaning while I'm reading this. So how about we bring up just a picture on the smartphone, and then we can continue discussing things. There we go. Tencent and NetEase are on a multi-year quest to fill out their content libraries with more of Japan's highly prized animation, comics, and games titles, betting on their potential to become global blockbuster hits. In a country that's typically taken a skeptical view to outside investment, their ventures are now finding a more receptive audience in the wake of the pandemic's impact on funding and Sony Group Corp cutbacks on support for smaller studios. Tencent, the world's largest game publisher, regards Japanese content as a potential anchor for its increasingly critical effort to build a Disney-style global media juggernaut that also spawns video, music, and books. It's on the brink of adding another studio to its string of acquisitions in recent years, according to People. So that's Tencent. That last bit there was regarding Tencent. But it's a different company, NetEase, who is looking to hire Nagoshi. So let's kind of break this down and discuss a little bit about what this means. Now, my initial reaction is like, oh boy, R.I.P. to the Ryuga Gotoku studio. Is this the end of Yakuza? That's kind of like my initial gut reaction, right? Because of course Nagoshi is sort of at the forefront of this franchise. What's up? Hold on a second. Nagoshi is at the front of this franchise, right? So it seems like for him to leave, it just seems like a really big deal, and it's going to impact the series and the franchise, but I don't think that's necessarily true. Once I had a moment to calm down from that. 1 second also. Let me turn off text to speech. There we go. Again, that's sort of like my initial gut reaction, but I don't think that once you have a little bit more time to kind of think about it, I think that it's not as bad as it initially seems. So let's kind of get into that. And for anyone in the chat, I will take a look at the comments after I'm kind of done with my little rant here. So, yes, he is sort of the head of that studio, and that studio is one of Sega's most prominent studios. Like, they produce a game franchise that's consistently getting great reviews and really great sales. So it's kind of like he's at the head of it, but of course, one man doesn't make a game, right? It's something that is made by many people, writers and artists and developers, programmers, so directors even, because Nagoshi doesn't direct these games. He's like sort of like the the higher level producer of them, right? Executive producer, something along those lines. So I think it's in good hands. Like he's sort of been working with these guys, with this crew for many years. Again, ever since 2006, really. They all have like their own ideas about making games. So I think in that sense, for the foreseeable future, I think that Yakuza games are going to be okay. We're not going to like necessarily feel a huge like impact in terms of like losing Nagoshi for the Yakuza and Judgment franchises. I don't think we're going to really get a good sense of that until like maybe like 2 to 3 games in, because one imagines that like the work for the next Yakuza 8 and Judgment 3 was probably somewhat in the planning, right? With Judgment coming out very soon, Lost Judgment, that is. So maybe the best way to put it is that they're kind of like a well-oiled machine at this point. So yes, we're losing Nagoshi, but I feel like the people that are still there, they really know how to make these games at this point. Again, they've been doing it for a very long time. We're up to Yakuza 8, right? Plus the spin-offs and Lost Judgment. So at least in the short term, I think we're going to be okay. So the other thing I think is worth looking at is sort of the other side of it. And now that Nagoshi is, well, potentially, again, the as far as I know, the contract hasn't been signed. That's what the article says. So Nagoshi is going over to NetEase, a Chinese company. And my understanding is that Tencent and possibly NetEase, they are sort of like creating studios in Japan now to create these games and getting Japanese talent to make these games. My feeling is that the thing that appealed to these developers, these like big companies, of getting Nagoshi, wasn't that, oh, okay, now you're gonna make Triad, right? You're gonna make like Yakuza games, except it's Triad now, or you're gonna make. I highly doubt that, and also I'd be reluctant to say that he'd even be making a game anywhere similar to a Yakuza type game, right? Like just like call it Gangsters or something, Gangsters of Japan, Gangs of Asia. I'd be reluctant to to make a claim like that's the reason why they hired him. That's, again, that seems like a very kind of like surface level interpretation of this hire here. I suspect that NetEase wanted Nagoshi because he's just really productive and he's just really efficient. Productivity and efficiency. So what do I mean by that? As we stare at this really funny picture, is there another picture we can look at? So again, look back to how many games he's made from the Yakuza franchise, right? We're on the 8th one, and they come out every couple years at this point, right? Like a fairly regular pace. Then there's Judgment, and then there was 2 PSP spin-offs. Then there was 2 Ancient Japan spin-offs, and then there was the Fist of the North Star Yakuza type game, and then Dead Souls. And let's not forget Binary Domain, which is a highly underrated game. So that's a bunch of games that this studio in effect has made under Nagoshi, right? And that just really speaks to his like kind of productivity. And when I say his productivity, I mean his ability to, guide a studio into being very productive, right? When you compare that output in the same time frame compared to someone like, I don't know, Fumito Ueda, right? Like the critical darling who made the Last Guardian and Eco games. Like, I mean, Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian. Those are 3 games, and like in pretty much the same time frame, Nagoshi has released like 12, 15 games, something ridiculous like that, right? So that's what I mean in terms of productivity. Hiring this guy to be the head of your studio, you know that you're going to get games, and you're going to get games at a fairly frequent rate. We're probably, if and when this whole thing goes through, maybe within a year and a half, 2 years at max, you're going to see a game from this guy, and then you're probably going to see another game the next year, and on and on. And tied to that is this idea of being very efficient, right? How is it that the RGG studio is able to release so many games at such a rapid pace, a fairly regular rate? Well, it's because he's super efficient. Take a look at this picture. This is Osaka, right? And Sotenbori, Osaka, is a location that has appeared in multiple Yakuza games. And of course, the same can be said about Kamurocho, Ocho, right, in Tokyo. That location has appeared in practically every single Yakuza game since the very first. They're very good at reusing assets, in other words, right? Many of the bad guys that you fight, again, they're like, the same models that you've battled before. Even when it comes down to the signage, as you see here, or the garbage cans in the game, or stuff like that, the cars, all of that is like reused assets. And that's not to say that that's a very, like cheap way of making games. It's not. Every studio does that, right? Even like Call of Duty, right? They have the same gun models. They use the same stages. They use the same sound effects, animations. That's all part of making video games, right? And Nagoshi is just, and the Yakuza games are just really good at making use of these assets, right? And putting them into a different context. And it's kind of become this thing where it's not seen as being like a cheap way of making games. Instead, it's kind of like this. It just becomes this really real and authentic place for gamers to constantly come back to, this realistic location, right? That, if I say go to the Sega arcade in Kamurocho, in Theater Square, you automatically know what I'm talking about. Millennium Tower, the batting cage, right? Everyone who's stuck with the franchise for this long, they kind of know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's the other thing that I think NetEase was looking to get with this hire of Nagoshi, is someone who's going to be very efficient, right? Maybe spend a good long while to release a game, taking 2 years or whatever, or 3 at most. But then those assets are going to be reused time and time again for future games. That's sort of my big picture guess as to why that they wanted to grab Nagoshi. It's not because, again, it's not because they want to make Yakuza games too. It's possible, right? It's possible that NetEase is looking to get this guy, and hey, let's just make more Yakuza games. We'll just call it something different. Maybe it'll be about something else, like the Chinese mafia, the triad or something. I kind of doubt that, but it's possible that they might just want him to do essentially the same thing with a different company. But I think in the greater scheme of things, it's this idea of his productivity, his ability to lead a studio in terms of productivity and efficiency in making these games. That, I think, is like the big attractive point in hiring Nagoshi. I'm noticing here that I can't actually see my chat. Sorry for people making comments. Oh, I see. Bacon, I highly doubt they'll be allowed to make a game about the triads and the Chinese mafia. Basically anything that sheds light on the dark side of the country is probably a taboo. Yes, you're exactly right. That's why I was saying, like, it's unlikely that they would do that. But so I think the other thing I want to mention here, it's actually really interesting. There was a quote from almost 10 years ago. Game Developer magazine asked Nagoshi in an interview. Let's see. Okay, we've seen a big shakeup lately with high-powered Japanese creators leaving companies. This was 10 years ago. Most significantly, Inafune from Capcom. You're still at Sega, and it seems like you're satisfied there. So here's Nagoshi's response. Well, I don't know if I'd call myself all that high-powered, and then he laughs. It's hard to say whether the trend is a good thing and for everyone's best interests. But a creator needs to be someplace where he can shine the brightest, and that's not necessarily always going to be happening by going it alone. It's not that I'm satisfied at Sega so much as I really owe one to Sega. They taught me how much fun making games can be. I doubt I would leave this company in 10 or even 20 years. Now, listen to this part. Unless something really drastic happens, I'm not going to leave on my own volition. So, unless something drastic happens, and I think that something drastic just happened, which is to say, a big pile of money was presented, thrown on his lap, and he was like, all right, let's do this. It's time for bigger and better and greener pastures. And the other thing is, he said that it's not that he's like satisfied with working at Sega. It's that he feels like he owes them one. And remember, this is 10 years ago, right? So we're kind of like I don't know, let's say Yakuza 4 or 5 or something. He felt like he owed something to Sega. Well, given the increased popularity of the Yakuza franchise and all that Nagoshi has done for Sega, and I would say that he was a key part of making Sega cool again, right? Because of course, like, Sonic has his off days. I think it's to put it in the kindest terms. Sega, sometimes Sonic isn't really like the coolest character that they have in their catalog, and their other games, outside of, like, say, outside of the Persona stuff, right? Sometimes those games just don't really hit. But at least when it came to the Yakuza games, that was something where everyone was on board, right? It became this kind of like internet meme, almost, like, in a good way, where people would post on Twitter and how cool Kiryu was, and also, like, when we talk about, like, the Yakuza games, so much of it revolves around masculinity and what it means to be a man, right? But I think that while certainly Kiryu was, like, this knight in shining armor, he also would often show, like, kind of a very sensitive and understanding side, and I think the same can be said of many Yakuza characters, even including the guy that we're looking at here, Ichiban. So yeah, it was just it just kind of came at the right time, Yakuza, and it took a long time to build up and become the thing that it is today. And along with that, it kind of elevated Sega's profile, right? And so that's all to say that I feel like when Nagoshi says I owe it to Sega, the debt has been paid in full. Again, that was a quote that he said 10 years ago. So in the 10 years since then, and remember that Yakuza was already kind of like blowing up at the time, and then 10 years since, it's blown up even more, right? He's really improved the franchise and Sega. So the debt has been paid. I say you're free to go, dude. Make your money. Hopefully you can make a good game with NetEase. Who's to say? Hopefully they'll let you make the games that you want to make with complete freedom. This is a good shot. But that's kind of like a big question in the air, and I don't really want to end on a negative note, but of course, when a big Bacon was, I spoke with Bacon about this, but basically, when a big Chinese company gets to a point where they're that big, eventually there's going to be some kind of government, I don't want to say interference, but influence on how they carry about their business. So that's a concern when it comes to the kind of content and stories that Nagoshi could tell with NetEase. Who knows? We can't really say. It's a concern for sure, but that's something that we're not really going to be able to say with 100% certainty. Bacon says, time to look forward to the next AAA gacha game. I mean, maybe that would that would be unfortunate, but again, who knows? Because the article from Bloomberg was saying how NetEase and the other company, Tencent, they're looking to expand more than just like the typical stuff that we know them for. They want to become a company like Disney, which is kind of a good and bad thing depending on how you interpret that. They want to be a huge media company that makes more than just the things that they're currently known for, right? And making a studio and making games, possibly making like more standard kind of like single player experience games, big budget AAA type games, that's all part of it. Who knows? But I think that's gonna do it for me right now in terms of like this this little news segment about Nagoshi leaving. There's still a lot more to be said. Of course, the contract apparently hasn't been fully signed, so we don't really know. And just to recap, I'm gonna say that for the time being, RGG Studio and all the people, the talented people that Nagoshi has sort of brought up in all these years since the first Yakuza game up till now, they're ready. They're ready to take over the reins. And they have their own ideas, and maybe we're going to see more interesting and different versions and views of Yakuza beyond what we've seen right now. That's also very interesting. And again, on the other side, NetEase is going to be looking to get out of Nagoshi someone who is productive and efficient with the time and money, okay? And yeah, that's generally about it. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.